It's World Breastfeeding Week, and in honor of that, I wanted to talk to you about how to make a freezer stash of breast milk with minimal effort. So maybe this is your first baby, your second baby, or maybe you're pregnant and you're just thinking about planning ahead, going back to work. Here are 3 tips to kind of help make that easier for you. First tip is using a haka or breast pump whenever possible. So in the very beginning, so 1 to 2 weeks in, your body is really working with that baby to establish your supply. Breastfeeding is a lot of supply and demand, so you really want to keep that in mind when you're first getting started. Latch that baby early and often. Whenever you're able to latch in the hospital is the best time to get started, as soon as possible, and then you can do it as often as the baby wants. From a lactation standpoint, we say that's about every 1 to 2 hours. From a real world standpoint, you're probably feeding that baby in the first week like all the time. All the time. It feels like all the time. But that's good because you're helping that baby tell your body that you need more milk. So it's very important. Now, what about an extra supply though? A stash that you can then freeze. So not the milk you're needing right now to feed the baby, but for later. So in the first 1 to 2 weeks, kind of watch and see what, if you're feeding the baby on one side, what is the other side doing? About week 2, if it starts leaking, that's a good time to go ahead and use what we call a haka. So this is a really cool tool, like $15 on Amazon. I'll put a link below, but you can use that on the other side to catch the milk that's leaking, so you're not wasting it, but also it has a little bit of suction in it, so you're not actually having to physically pump it, but it does draw out extra milk. After a nursing session, I would find 3 to 4 ounces every single time in the haka, and that was just a huge surprise. I didn't actually expect that. I didn't expect it to make more milk, so I was pleasantly surprised after that. Now, you can also pump. So a tip that I would say is pump for 10 minutes a day in the morning. So after you feed that baby, in the morning feed. So you have more milk usually in the morning because of overnight hormones and other factors. So go ahead and pump for 10 minutes after that first feeding. With the pump though, I would be careful not to do that until maybe about the 3rd, 4th, maybe even 6th week, depending on when your body has already created that supply and demand. Unless your supply is low. If you're trying to get your supply up, pumping would be helpful. But for this stash, let's say you have a normal supply and you just want to make extra milk to stash, that's when I would do the pumping for 10 minutes after the first feed. 10 minutes is easy. Don't overcomplicate it. Just make it 10 minutes every single day and you can store that milk. So you want to be careful with these scenarios of oversupply. Thinking like oversupply, that sounds great. I'm working on creating a stash. No, oversupply means you make a little more milk than your baby can actually take, and so what that does is the milk just kind of sits there and can create mastitis and other issues, so be careful of that. And the second thing is looking at different feeding techniques. So if you're trying to increase supply, you may even look at like triple feeding. If you're looking at oversupply, you may look at block feeding. And sometimes I ended up actually only block feeding, which was kind of an accident, but it worked out really well, and I have a chunky baby, so I think that helped a lot. But just think about different techniques and ask your lactation consultant or physician if you have questions about techniques. Now, the third thing is storage. I made a hot mess of my storage scenario, and I did not know that when I was getting this milk from the haka, I needed to put how many ounces was in a bag. Now that makes so much sense that you would need to write the ounces and actually measure it out according to what your baby would eat. Like if the baby's gonna eat 3 ounces, I probably need to put 3 ounces in a bag. First time did not register in my head at all. So we go to daycare and they're like, oh, we tried to give her 6-ounce bottle and she struggled with the bottle. And I was like, she's never taken 6 ounces. To this day, she's 9 months old and still hasn't taken 6 ounces. So she was 3 months old and they were trying to feed her the whole bag that I had measured out, which makes sense because they were doing what the mom said to do. But I didn't realize that would happen. So instead I had to go through my hot mess of a freezer and put ounces and weigh everything on how many ounces, weigh everything and put how many ounces is actually in the bag. Again, makes perfect sense. I just didn't think about it. So I'm telling you, go ahead and for your freezer stash, make sure you measure out appropriate volume. So if your baby's gonna take around 3 months, if your baby's gonna take 3 ounces, put 3 ounces in a bag and write 3 ounces on it. Of course, always put the date that you pumped that milk. And then you can also put AM or PM because we get different hormones, but we're pumping for 10 minutes in the morning, so you could assume they're all AM by the time you go to work. So this is a great way to get freezer stash. When my baby went to daycare, it worked out perfectly fine, and we still have milk now. And so if you end up not needing it all, there are plenty of things you do. You can donate it, you can make breast milk soap out of it for your skin or your baby's skin. So don't get discouraged if you have a lot in the freezer and you don't really need it. That's great too. You just have it for backup. And you can do something we call informal sharing, where you would maybe find someone who needed some breast milk. I would only do this with super close friends that I trusted really well, because you don't really know what's in that milk. And so you really want to do this with somebody that you trust. I hope these 3 tips helped you. And if you like this kind of content, let me know what else you'd like to see in the comment section below, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a video.